Hello and welcome to the Edupedia world. Well, in this tutorial we do the part 2 of exception handling in Java. So let's begin. Well, in this tutorial we take a deep dive into some of the topics of exception handling since in our previous part 1 we have covered the basics. So over here we are going to take a deep dive into the exception handling and we'll cover some of the important topics of this. So let's begin. Okay, the first topic that we are trying to cover over here is the finally block. So let's say what it says. Although try and catch provide a terrific mechanism for trapping and handling exception, we are left with the problem of how to clean up after ourselves if an exception occurs. Let's say if an exception occurs and we want to execute something after that is really important, then how to do that? Okay, because execution transfer out of the try block as soon as the exception is thrown, we can't put our cleanup code at bottom of the try block, except it to be executed if an exception occurs. Almost as bad an idea would be placing up cleanup code in each of the catch block. So let's say if we are writing 10 catch block, then we cannot write our cleanup code in every catch block. Okay. Exception handlers are poor place to clean up after the code and try block because each handler then requires its own copy of cleanup code. If, for example, you allocated a network socket and opened a file somewhere in a guarded section, each exception handler would have to close the file and release the socket. So, if let's say you are having 5 catch blocks, then you have to repeat the same code 5 times if you write it in a catch block. That would make it so easy to forget to do cleanup and also lead to a lot of redundant code. Okay. To address this problem, Java offers the finally block. The finally block encloses the code that is always executed at some point after the try block. Whether an exception was thrown or not, even if there is a return statement in try block, the finally block executes right after the return statement is encountered and before the return executes. Fine. This is the right place to close your file, release your network, perform any other cleanup you require in the code. If the try block executes with no exception, the finally block is executed immediately after try block completes. If there was an exception thrown, the finally block executes immediately after the proper catch block completes. Fine, so this is how it is done. So here you can see the finally block and it is doing try, and if the first line is of the guarded region, then you can go to catch and this is my first exception. Then there could be some my second exception which could be any exception, and after that you can put your finally block to put the code to release any resources we allocated in the try and try. Okay. As before execution starts, at the first line of try block, line 2, if there are no exceptions thrown in the try block, execution transfer to line 11, first line of the finally block. On the other hand, if my second exception is thrown, while the code is in try block is executing, the execution transfer to first line of that exception handler to line 8 in the catch clause. Okay. After all the code in catch clause is executed, the program moves to line 11. That will be the first line of finally clause. Repeat after me, finally always runs. Okay. We have to refine that little. But as of now, just remember that finally always run. Okay. So it doesn't actually matter if there is an exception or not. Finally will always run. If exception is not thrown, finally runs. If exception is caught, then also finally runs. If exception is not caught, then also finally runs. Okay. Then remember, finally clauses are always not required. If you do not write one, your code will compile and run just fine. In fact, if you have no resources to clean up after your try block completes, you probably not need a finally clause. Also, because compiler doesn't even require catch clause sometimes, you run across the code that has a try block immediately followed by the finally block. Okay, sometimes you don't have anything to write in the catch block, then you can write immediately the finally block after try block by skipping the catch block. Such code is useful when exception is going to be passed back to the calling method as explained in the next section. Using finally block allows the cleanup code to execute even when there isn't a catch clause. So you can still have a finally clause if there is no catch clause, but the rule is like try should be either followed by a catch block or it should be followed by a finally block. So if even one of them is there, then we don't have any issues. Fine. So this is a finally block. You can see over here the following legal code demonstrate a try, catch and finally. So we are having try and we are doing some stuff that we are doing. Then we are having catch and in catch we are actually taking some exception. And finally we have finally. So this is a legal demonstration. Now let's check the other one. So this is illegal. Why so? Because we have written try and there is a need of either catch or a finally. But after writing try, we are not writing either a catch block or a finally block. But we have to write one of these. That's why it's giving us an exception. So just make sure whenever you write a try block, just follow it up by either a catch block or a finally block. Okay. Then again we are having one more illegal code demonstration which is showing try and then it is writing a SOP statement and after that it is writing a catch block. So this is illegal because just after try it should be followed by either again catch or finally. So you cannot have catch block after writing few other statements. It should immediately follow the try block. That's why this code is also illegal. Let's do an example of finally in our Eclipse IDE. I have opened my Eclipse IDE and here you can see I have already created an example. Let's see what this example does. So we are having a class finally demo and then we are having a main method. Okay. Inside a main method we are making multiple calls. So we are making to call 2, call 3 and call 4. Okay. After that you can see first in the call method. Okay, let me just comment out rest of the code because I don't want you to get confused and let's simply do call firstly. So in first case you can see we are having a call method. In call method we are printing something or you can do any important task if you want to do in the try method. Okay, and over here I'm just returning try so that it prints try over here. Then I'm having a catch block, it's doing a exception E and it is returning catch just to let you know that this return is from catch. Then finally I'm having a finally block and it is returning finally. Fine. Now let's run this code and see what is actually getting returned to our main method. So if I run this code, you can see firstly 1 or 2 is printed because that is something in the try block. And then the return statement of finally got executed. Why so? Because this happens like whenever there's a try, just before executing the return statement of try, it actually goes to the finally clause and execute all the statement in finally clause. So in this finally clause, it is having just one statement, that is a return statement. So it will return that finally. And once it is, a method can return just one thing, since a method has returned, method just comes out. Okay. Therefore, the return statement of try block do not get executes and similar goes for the catch block. So only the return statement of finally block is executed over here. Fine. So this is a case where exception is not there. It's a simple code and there was no exception that was caught. It's a simple, you can say, block or a simple call. Now let's run another case. Let me just, uncomment the statement and let me put comment over here. Fine. So now you can see we are having two more statements. One is just nothing and one is to call the call to method. So let's check our call to method. So let's see what's happening in call to method. But again, it's a private static method and in try block we are printing 1. or rather I think I should print the method name. So I should rather print call2. Okay. And then it is also returning try from the try block. Then the catch block we are printing 2. So rather printing 2, I'll print call2 catch block. Okay, and finally we don't have a return statement, rather we are simply printing 3, or I should rather print it out call2 finally block. Fine. Now what do you think will be the output of calling call2 method? So you can see in the try block we are having something to print, and after that we are returning something. Okay. In catch block something to print and we are returning something, but in finally block we are not returning anything, we are simply printing something. So let's see the output. You see the output is firstly from the try block it printed call2. Then it directly goes to the finally block and printed call2 finally block, and then it came back to the return of try and finally returned try. Why so? Because as I told you, inside the try block, just before executing the return statement, that will be the last statement of your try block, the finally block always gets executed. So the finally block will get executed, and whatever return will happen in finally block, since finally block this time is not having any return statement, so the control comes back to the try block to execute the return statement of try block, and now that's why it's returning try over here. Fine. So that is the purpose. Like whenever there is return in all three, always the return of finally will get executed. Okay. Now let's run next one. So in the next one you can see we are doing a call to call 3. Okay, so when we do a call to call 3, let's see what's there in call 3. So this is call 3. In call 3 you can see we are printing something. Again, instead of printing 1 or 2, just print something logical. So I'm printing call 3 logical block. Fine, and then you can see what we are doing over here is we are actually throwing new exception over here. From try block we are throwing an exception explicitly. So if we do throw new exception, this will actually throw the exception, and just below it we are catching that exception in the catch block. Okay, so from the catch block it's actually returning the catch, okay, the keyword catch, and from the finally block it's returning finally. Okay, now let's see what will be the output of this one. So see, firstly what it did is from the try block is printed call 3 try block. Okay, after that as in soon we throw the exception. So whenever the exception is thrown, the return goes to the catch block. But inside a catch block you can see that the return statement of finally is executed but not of catch. Why so? Because although it went to the catch block, but inside a catch block there is nothing to print. There is a simple return statement. So just before doing a return of catch, it has to execute the finally block. So as in case of try, just before doing the return statement of try, it goes to the finally block. Similarly, just before doing the return statement of catch, it again goes back to the finally block. So it will go to the finally block and execute whatever is there in finally before doing the return statement of catch. But in finally block over here we are having a return statement, and since a method can return one thing, so it actually returned from finally. That's why the return statement of catch is never executed. Fine. Let me just try to do this. Let's say let me comment throw and let me do try. So I'm not throwing an exception over here, and I'm having return in all three. So this is something we have already seen, and I think you must be able to guess it now. So you see, again call to 3 and then finally 1 is executed, because if finally is having a return statement, then always the return statement of finally is executed, no matter try and catch do have return or not. Fine. So this was call 3. Let's go to the last one, which is call 4. Okay. So let's see what we are doing in call 4. So this is call for. Over here you can see again we are printing something that is not logical. So let me just write it, call for try block. Okay. So we are actually printing call for try block, and then we are again throwing a new exception. Okay. This time again in a catch block we are doing some return, and in finally block we are printing something. We are creating a string builder object. We are doing some append to string builder, and we are doing some of the things to a string builder object. Okay, and finally we are printing that. So there is no return statement in finally this time. Okay, now let's run our code. So if I run our code, you can see first thing it did, it call for try block. So it start executed the try block. After that we explicitly throwed an exception. So when we did throw new exception, so when we do throw new exception, it will go to the catch block. Inside the catch block, we are doing return catch. Okay. And when we are doing return catch, so what will happen is we are having a finally block. So just before doing a return statement of catch, it will go to the finally block. In the finally block, we are printing 3, and thus our output contains 3 after that. Then we have created a string builder, and we are doing something to that string, and whatever we have did as a output, we are getting something. And then since there is no return statement, and finally the control go back to the catch return statement, and finally the return statement of catch get executed. Fine. So I hope so you got the difference. Actually, there is a law. The law is simply if there is a return statement in finally, then always the return statement of finally will get executed, no matter if try and catch are having return or not. Okay. And if there is no return statement is finally, then whichever block from which where finally got started, that is try or catch, its return statement will get executed. Okay. So why this happen is because just before executing the return statement of either try or catch, the finally block starts executing. So whatever is there in finally block will execute before going to the return statement of try and catch. And even if finally contains a return statement, then the return of finally will only get executed. Fine. So this is what I wanted to show you. So okay guys, in this tutorial we have taken a deep dive into the finally block and seen when the finally will get executed. So thank you for this tutorial. Let's meet in the next tutorial where we'll cover the part 3 of exception handling.